if you're not, that's cool too.
Yeah, I'm recording. All right, so I'm Savannah. I'm the Director of Student Affairs for the RSO. I'm a third year, just like probably a lot of you on this call. And we have four of our lovely fourth years on this call who recently matched. So thanks for joining. Feel free to ask any questions, type them in the chat, or just jump in, but we'll let them introduce themselves. Thanks for being here, guys.
Lulu, I think you're up first. I think you need to lead us off.
Okay, sure. I will lead us off. Hi, everyone. My name is Lulu Weindruck. I am a fourth year at Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine in Fort Worth, Texas, and I just matched to Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas.
And what are your clinical specialties, Lulu?
My clinical specialties, I'll say like my interests.
Yeah.
My interests are medical education, ultrasound, and like health policy and advocacy. So
Cool. Hey, everybody, I'm Spencer. I'm the resident old fella. I'm a non-traditional student coming into this from a prior career in nursing. I just matched into John Peter Smith in Fort Worth, Texas. And in terms of other things you can ask me about, if you're thinking about, Texas, sorry, Coral. Other things you can ask me about, if you're curious about going this way, I can talk about applying EM/IM because I did that as well successfully, even though that wasn't where I matched. So.
Kayla, you go since I'm the only one not in Texas.
Okay, so I complete our little Texas trio over here. I'm Kayla, fourth year at Kansas City University. I'm matched in Corpus Christi, and I am interested in global health, I guess, and like underserved populations.
I'm Coral. I am also fourth year. I feel like, I don't know why I still say that. I said it on interviews too, and I'm like, I'm Coral. I'm a fourth year. Anyways, I like at socials, I'm like, I'm Coral. I'm a fourth year med student. But anyways, I go to VCOM Auburn campus, and I matched at Eastern Virginia Medical School in Norfolk, Virginia, next to Virginia Beach. Oh, and I have interests. Emergency medicine, ultrasound, med ed, kind of more recruitment stuff, national leadership,
Women in EM.
women in EM. Okay, I think that's good enough for me.
Okay, so I can just read questions in the chat too. So our first question is maybe an obvious or not so obvious question. As a third year entering fourth year and trying to hopefully land an EM residency, how do I look most appealing as a VSLO applicant for emergency medicine interview rotation? What documentation should I seek while interviewing beyond trying to do my best on the rotation? And what timeline should I keep in mind moving forward with EM as the end goal? A lot of pieces, but you guys can read it in the chat too.
I'll lead us off by saying with VSLO, it is better to be fast than to be good. It is better to turn in your application on the very, very first day, the first couple hours of that application system opening, which is frustrating because every program opens on a different day and some of them don't announce it and some of them do. And some of them don't, like, say they're going to open on a certain day and then they don't. Like, it's trash. I know it's trash because we all went through it, but it's better to be fast than to be good.
You can set alarms to get
Oh,
you.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
nice.
I had so many alarms set, so many calendar notifications. Oh, this program's opening on this day. Just try to get in early.
And if
These
you're
slow apps
rotating,
look the same.
yeah, and if you're like on rotations while like you get an email that's like, oh, so and so has opened on VSLO, just tell them like, hey, a sub I opened that I really want to apply to. And they're like usually really cool. They understand that as a third year becoming a fourth year, this time is sacred. Like interview season, they get it. So just if you're cool about it, they'll be cool about it. It's just like, I need to pop out for 10 minutes. I'll be right back. Is that okay? And usually they're fine with it.
Also, just for generalized knowledge about your audition rotations, they tell you that you're going to be treated like basically an intern, and they mean it. They truly just let you go off and do things on your own. And then they come check you later. Like the very first day, and I had this like massive dog bite, and my attending was like, okay, go sew it up. And I was like, what? I don't even know. I need rabies. I don't even know what's going on. And so I had to like find a resident and just like beg for help. So make sure you do know some procedures. And if you can, a lot of times like a resident will be like, okay, tell me the procedure or like the checklist or how to put in a central line. And if you tell them it right, that often will let you do it. So just knowing that kind of simple stuff, it will take you a long way and will make you look good on your slows as well.
What Coral's trying to say is that she had actually never even seen a dog before. She didn't know what one was.
No,
So
and
they
I was
said there's a
trying
dog
to-
bite, and she's like, "Dog? Is it like a frog? It sounds the same."
Yeah,
it
it
was a
was
whole thing.
pretty scary moment, but
How to look most appealing, or what documentation should you seek while interviewing beyond trying to make the best rotation? I'm not quite sure I understand that question. Anybody else follow that?
Is that talking about like procedure logs, like documentation?
I don't
Well,
know. I was trying to answer it, but I don't think I did. I just talk.
Kayla, if you feel, oh, here we go. Letters of rec. Oh yeah, you have to get a slow.
Do you
Anybody
guys
want to
know what
explain?
slows are? Do we need to
Or I'll
talk?
go for it.
Who's this person? Kayla.
It's
Do you
Kayla.
know what slows are? Okay. So you have to get a standard letter of evaluation, which is what SLO stands for emergency medicine. You have to have at least one, but they prefer two. Most programs require two, but some will accept your application with one. What it is just this standard eval that they fill out online, and then they upload it into your ERAS based on the template. And I can try to find like a link to what it looks like now. They changed.
I got the link, Coral. I'm putting it in the chat.
Oh, slay. Okay.
I got you.
But they changed it last year, and it's essentially just a way for them to kind of judge your clinical skills and how you are as a person the same way for every program. So it's kind of standardized instead of, this person's great and we love her. And it'll say basically like if you're the top 10% of the class or like that group that's rotating, then if they're going to rank you in their top 10%. And it kind of just gives all the program directors a really good idea of how you're going to act as an intern. And if those programs are willing to rank you, maybe they should too. And sometimes the location of the SLO people think about when they're applying. It didn't affect me in any way. I auditioned in Oklahoma and Georgia and went to Virginia. So I don't think that is a huge factor, but that is something that people do talk about. And I'm going to be quiet and let y'all talk too.
I will say, except maybe Texas. If you want to go to Texas, Texas unfortunately loves Texas. So the three of us did do aways in Texas because they know that they can like trust the other Texas PDs for some reason more than anyone else. And so if you are looking into Texas, I don't know if any other states like that, but do a sub-I in Texas.
So
Also-
your schools.
Oh, sorry, Spencer, go
Lulu.
ahead.
No,
No,
please go
I was
ahead.
just going to say also, it's kind of important to note, you'll hear like different terminology, and the links that I'm looking for that I'm about to send in the chat will break it down. You'll hear OSLO, you'll hear ESLO, you'll hear all sorts of acronyms relating to the SLO, but basically they're all variations on this one standardized format. And so you're not going to get like your traditional like narrative letter, like, dear residency program, I am a family medicine preceptor writing on behalf of this student. You're not going to get you're not going to get those letters. You're going to just get these flows, but you can get them from different people. So the two that Coral mentioned that you need to have are going to be from your auditions at EM residency programs, and those are going to be called E-SLOs. You can also get them from non-residency programs, like I did a rotation at community ER, and so I believe those are called O-SLOs. I can't remember exactly which version of the SLO they are, but they're not E-SLOs. You could also say you do a rotation with a toxicologist or a pediatric emergency medicine doctor or an ultrasound rotation. You could get SLOs from those, but they're not e-slows. So there's a distinction between the e-slow and the like non-e-slow. And I had to do a little dive to find this good Twitter thread that breaks down the components of the slow, but I'm about to put it in the chat. Spencer, go ahead.
Yeah, you're spot on. This is kind of hidden curriculum stuff that a lot of your career advisors, school advisors don't really know because they're advising people for so many specialties. So what you're going to hear from your school, you probably already heard from your school, is be sure to find a preceptor from third year that's going to write you a good letter of eval because that's going to go on your fourth year application. Don't do that. With the rare exception being some VSLO places, this is your fourth year rotations. Some places want a letter of rec, almost none do. So you may need a letter for that. Otherwise, you do not need a letter of rec from third year in any capacity to apply EM. Let me repeat that. You do not need a letter of rec from third year in any capacity to apply EM. Okay? You only need these E-slows, some, and O-slow if you're doing an off-service rotation, whatever form of slow. You only need slows for EM. So don't let your faculty advisor wear you out about that.
Can I ask a quick question just while we're on the topic of slows, just in general? Sorry, guys, I'm Matt. I'm a third year right now, doing clinical rotations, applying, doing all this crazy stuff. Can't turn my camera on, unfortunately, because my
We're big mad
to update, and now I can't turn it on. Anyway, I've heard a lot of sort of conversation about how to approach people when asking for slows. I've heard wait till the end. I've heard start right away and just come out, be transparent, be like, I'm going to work my ass off. I'm really looking for a letter. Like, what approach do you guys suggest for people about to go on these audition rotations with regards to asking for slows?
If you're doing a fourth year, oh, go ahead, Coral, I'm sorry.
No, I just feel like most of the applications even asked if you were going to need a slow at the end. And so they know that ahead of time, and they all have a very good system in place, whether it be like grading you at the end of your shift or having certain physicians that your attendings fill out papers for you or residents fill out papers for you, judging you. And then the PD or the APD or whoever's in charge of uploading slows fills in what they have decided after they all meet as a body. So like they know that you're probably going to need a slow whenever you come there. But you can definitely just kind of let the PD or whoever is in charge of it know when you get there, just to like kind of remind them if you want to. But generally they do already know that you're going to need a slow.
Yeah, this isn't going to be from like a rando attending that you got along well with while you're on the rotation. This is going to be from the PD or the clerkship director. That's who writes these. If they don't have a system, and if they're running students through fourth year EM bound med students through their ED, and they don't have a system in place for this already, then that's pretty weird. It should be pretty standardized. They're either asking you at the beginning or somewhere around the middle or whatever. It should be understood.
And ask every program you do a sub-I or an away at for a slow, because you never know. Like Coral and I had a little issue with one slow coming through on time, and if you're lucky and you have another one already, even if you weren't planning to use it, it's nice to have, because when that time comes around to submit ERAS and for that opening day, like you got to have some letters in there already. So if you think that you're going to rotate somewhere, maybe not really use the slow, still get it. It won't hurt you to have it, and that way you've got it if you need to upload it.
Yeah, just going back to Kayla's original question, I see some questions in the chat here. So in terms of like the time frame, so ERAS will open for you guys. I can't remember the exact date, but it's going to be like September like 26th-ish. And like Kayla said, you need at least one slow in by the time you submit ERAS. So in case your schools haven't made it clear, this isn't a like ERAS opens on the 26th and like submit by October 1st. Like this is like you need everything done, submitted like before the 26th. And that includes that slow. Because what will happen is like the morning of the 27th, all the programs will download your file. And so you need to have at least one slow in by that date. And so in terms of like timeline for auditions, I personally did mine in August and September. And I was my September rotation was very on top of it. They knew to get that slow in by the end of the rotation because you needed it for that. If you don't have a slow in by that deadline, say it's your second slow, like Coral and Kayla mentioned, sometimes things, sometimes you might have issues. It's not the end of the world, but you need to have at least one slow in by that date that ERAS like is available to programs.
Yeah, Lulu can attest to this. I was panic texting her around the early October time because I had a second slow that was like really slow coming in, and I was like, programs are going to be screening me out because I don't have 2 slows. What am I going to do? And I ended up with way more interviews than I knew what to do with. So don't stress over it too hard. Like it'll all will come out in the wash. To back up,
If it's super late, I would recommend at least emailing some of the programs that you. Oh, wait, are you talking to me?
saying call them.
Oh,
Yeah, call them or email them.
I thought you
Yeah.
were telling me I was muted or something. I was like, oh dear, what am I doing? No, I would recommend, calling them, emailing them, and letting them know, hey, I have this slow. It is going to be coming. I promise. I'm just waiting to hear back from them. And if you don't want to do that, when you do finally get the slow, even if you didn't email them the first time, email all of the programs that you're still interested in and tell them that you have a new slow uploaded. Because unless these people, the program directors, log into ERAS and check for updates, they won't see your new slow. You have to tell them about it unless they're avidly looking for updates to applications.
Okay,
So I'm gonna
push
back
you
this up a
guys
little bit.
along. So
Yeah.
next question is, how important is it to do an elective EM rotation during 3rd year?
I didn't. I was fine. I did an ultrasound one kind of by accident. So that was in the ED, but I didn't even know I wanted to do emergency med at that time. So I didn't have a single thing in my 3rd year really geared toward EM until the spring when I decided.
I would say if you're on the fence of doing EM versus not, definitely do one. But if you know you're gung-ho EM, then there's like not necessarily a reason to unless you just want to.
Only as important as like your comfort and experience in the ED. Like, obviously like some people are rock stars, like Kayla obviously crushed it and matched and did great. But if you feel like, it's going to take me some time to get into the flow of the ED. I've never been in one before. I don't know how to present patients in the way ED doctors like. You don't really want to be figuring that out like during a 4th year audition. You can. What they're looking for in auditions is that you take direction, you improve, you're teachable, you're pleasant to be around. They're not expecting you to walk in being a clinical rock star. So if you never get a 3rd year rotation and you don't think you're going to know what you're doing when you get to the ED, that's fine. You can still be cool and they can still want to have you. Like they don't need us all to be badasses out the gate.
I would say that if you do not have experience in the ER, like if you shadowed, if you were an ER scribe, if you're an EMT, or if you, were like a badass ICU nurse like Spencer, if you have significant experience with ER and critical care, it might not be as necessary. But I do think if you have somewhat limited experience in the ER, like maybe you've only shadowed a few times or something along those lines, I think it is really important to do a 3rd year rotation because I think, like any rotation, we may have preconceived notions about a specialty, and then you get there and it's not at all what you expect. So in that sense, I would say it's important, but otherwise, I did one during my 3rd year just for my own comfort level and to prep for my auditions, and it worked for me, but otherwise not necessarily super important.
I will add, I guess I did a 4-week rotation with an EM doc who is not affiliated with any like EM residency program. I did that 4-week rotation right before my first sub-I, and he basically worked me like an intern. He was like, we're just going to get you all prepped up and ready to go for your sub-I. So I wasn't learning on my sub-Is, I guess. So if you don't have time to do that, then maybe try to schedule one in 3rd year. But for a lot of you guys who are 3rd years and more able to do one, not a big deal. If you can, maybe get in 2 to 4 weeks with an EM doc before your first sub-I though. And that'll at least give you, the idea of like what you're gonna have to be doing.
All right, y'all, next question is, how much did you sort through current residents at programs to compare DO, MD numbers, and how much did that factor into your decision of where to apply?
I quite literally scoured every single residency program, and if they did not have a DO, I did not apply. Or if they did not have a DO and I did apply, it was because they specifically mentioned that they were okay with Comlex only. I only applied with Comlex, and I think that is okay, and it worked out fine, but you do have to do a lot more work when it comes to looking into who to audition with and who to even apply to. I way over applied. That's my honest truth. I was real worried, but ended up being just fine. And everyone's going to say the same thing to all of you, I assure you. But yes, I took that pretty seriously. I applied to almost every program I found that had DOs and took ComLex only. So I don't know if you only took ComLex. If you did, then I can send you my list if you want. But yeah, I do think it's important because yeah, you might want to be the first DO at a program, but also do you? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, it's a fine balance between being realistic and ambitious as well. Like, I mean, I rotated one of the places where I did a sub-I was one of the first DOs to rotate ever. Like, they literally didn't allow DOs to rotate until this year. So I was one of the first DOs to rotate in their
Where was
ED.
that, Lulu?
University of Maryland. They now accept DOs. They have DO residents. They have DO faculty. But they previously, like, the institution didn't allow DOs. And so, I think, do your research. One of my classmates was also one of the first people to, supposedly one of the first DOs to match at like a historically not DO friendly place. So it is possible, but you want to be realistic. And also, like, I also way over applied. It's so expensive. Don't over apply if you don't have to. So yeah, I would say, like Coral said, just like do your research, but also, like, it's not out of the realm of possibility to, if it's like your dream program or dream place to rotate.
So this
I'm
kind
going
of
to take
bounces.
the opposite. Oh, go ahead, Kayla. Sorry.
I was gonna say this kind of bounces into somebody's question about the sweet spot for number of applications. I think probably between the four of us, we applied to very different numbers. I applied to 58, I think, which was far too many based on how many interviews I received. But my school was telling me, well, you need between 40 and 60. And when I first did my first pass through, I had like 43, and I like panic applied to 15 more. And looking back, it was a waste of money and time and effort and everything.
I applied to 106 programs. Don't
96.
do that.
75.
So, yeah, how many, Lulu?
75.
So even, between the four of us, yeah, very different numbers. And I think we all probably would agree it was too many. So don't do that. But the problem is, if you don't apply to it right away and you go back and you apply later, they're kind of like, well, why didn't they apply on the first time that they could for me? Unless it's like you're doing a specialty change and you're like, well, I'm applying late because I just decided on your specialty. That's why. But
Yeah.
kind of get a good plan together beforehand, but don't let anyone stress you out about not applying to enough. If you have picked your list of residencies and you're like, I'm good with this, then go with it. Don't waste money.
So,
like we
I'm
did.
going to take the opposite tack of Coral here a little bit and say I didn't give a damn how many DOs they had. I applied where I wanted to apply. I didn't take step one. I only took step two. And the way I think about it is, if you were an MD student and you obviously took step. So let's say that 100% of programs are like in your window at that point. If you're a DO student, let's eliminate 10% of programs. If you're a DO student who didn't take step one, then let's eliminate another 5%. If you're a DO student who didn't take step two, I'd say that's the biggest hit. And then you're then limited to another subset of programs, because they're just going to be picky and they're weird and they're old school and they don't want to look at you. But there are programs that are just not going to look at us either way. Cincinnati, never taken a DO. Again, maybe one of you guys will be the first. And then, like Lulu said, one of her classmates got into a program this year that has historically never taken it. Lulu, like she said, she rotated somewhere. So we're making inroads, but you just kind of have to think about, how big of a pool do I want to start with? Do I want to limit myself at all? But once you've made that decision on what kind of school you go to and which tests you're going to take, just send it. Just go. I mean, I got a love letter from Maryland EMIM. I think if I'd ranked them, I would have matched there. And cool. That would have been great. And if I'd listened to the things that people were telling me early in the season, people told me, oh, you didn't take step one, they're not even going to interview you. Well, they did. And I second looked there. It was great. So don't listen to the haters, and don't edge yourself out of anywhere prematurely, I would say. Did I spend more money than I needed to?
To your
Maybe,
point, Spencer, I should say I do agree with you in the fact that I thought there was 1% chance I would match where I matched, because they have mostly MDs. So yeah. I said that, but I mean it kind of, but I also see where you're coming from, and I shouldn't just bash I don't know.
Oh, I'm not criticizing you. I just think it's interesting that we both have these like wildly divergent. I never set foot in Frida. I never opened Frida, not once. I looked at Emra Match, and I compiled a list of programs, and I went YOLO. I mean, just yeah, don't sell yourself short is my advice.
It also changes. It changes so much year to year. And I think that's something that I feel like became very apparent this year, because like you can look at the classes from year to year, and like I know places where like I would look and be like, oh, they're mostly MDs. And then like this year they matched like 5 DOs, or like my program, which is like very, very, very DO friendly. I'm one of like, I think my class is 8. There are 8 in my class. 6 of them are MDs, only 2 DOs, which is like different than previous years. So like it changes from year to year. So keep that in mind too. Yeah, it is what it is.
All right, you guys, next.
I
Oh,
was gonna
sorry.
add, I did use Frida. It just helped me filter out, kind of like Coral was talking about.
Next question, from Anna. First of all, congrats on matching. Second of all, third year here. What are some examples of residency program red flags that you looked out for? How do you tell malignant programs apart from the good ones? They're all starting to sound the same.
Pause real quick, Savannah. I think we skipped our friend Tanisha Khan. Right
Oh,
before
sorry.
that.
I skipped Tanisha's question because I feel like you guys kind of answered it.
Just
I
talk to clerkship
answered-
director. Okay.
I've been answering some of them in the chat. So
Wonderful.
I put clerkship director in case anyone just has anything else to say.
Okay, so back to the Savannah,
flags.
which one are we on? Red flags. So my favorite thing, this was kind of during interviews more than anything, so it may not help you decide on which programs to probably apply to at first, but when you have like a meet and greet the night before, or you're just talking with residents and like there's a couple of them in the room together, like see how they vibe. Like for my meet and greets, my favorite ones were when like the residency program would like sponsor a dinner at somebody's house and they were all there in the same room on the same like camera meet and greet, versus like 4 random residents at home by themselves, kind like either fully ignoring each other and only answering questions, or like only talking to each other and ignoring everyone else. So you can kind of get a good like vibe of how things are going there. And so I don't know, for me that was the biggest thing, because I was really interested in somewhere that I'm just going to fit in well with these guys for 3 years, because you're going to get a good education anywhere you go. But I really wanted somewhere where I was like, oh, these guys really seem like they're friends with each other outside of work even. So for me that was my biggest thing.
Yeah, I'll second that. There were some meet and greets where I was straight up miserable. Like they were, all on separate screens. There were babies crying in the background, which that's fine. Have your baby, love it. But like, don't look so miserable to be there. Like that this was chained upon you. You were literally handcuffed to your computer and made to be on the Zoom call. And other ones, they would like all hang out. They'd be drinking and hanging out and just like chatting with you, and it like felt like if you were there with them, it would be the exact same thing. So that is one green flag, I would say. And then red flags, honestly, taking a look at the program director and seeing if their values align with yours, I think is very important, because at the end of the day, they're who you'll be going to. Like I had one program director, I asked about women in EM and what she believed in, or like if they have that, excuse me, I like messed the story up. Like if they had anything for that, they did clubs or anything, because a lot of programs do. And she told me she did not believe in women in EM. And I was like, excuse me?
What?
I just literally like one of my last interviews.
Like the tooth fairy, like they don't exist.
Correct. And I was like, aren't you like I'm very confused. And I literally made this is the only interview I made a face at, but I literally was like, oh. And she was like, I can tell I did not answer this the way that you wanted. And I was like, that's correct. We just don't agree.
Wow.
That's fine. And it was the strangest thing. So just note those little things and like literally write them down the second you get off of your interview, because you will forget when they're all the exact same after you've done 10 interviews. But writing stuff down immediately helps a lot. That kind of tells you a lot about red flags immediately.
So my red flags are pretty weird for this. A lot of us were very vibes based this year. Like you gotta be All my notes about programs were just very much like how people made me feel. Did they seem chill? Like, did they talk over me a lot? It was, stuff like that. But two that I would mention that I think other people should look out for, and it may not be indicative of quality at all, but I think it is. Look at the program website. Do they have their residents on the website? And if so, do their headshots just suck? Like, do they even care enough to get their residents like decent looking headshots so like they look okay? Because I don't know, I think that's weird. I think it's like, oh, they all look terrible. Like somebody took this with a Nokia in a back closet somewhere, and during the middle of shift. Like, that's weird.
My
So
program-
that's one.
My program had me on the website the end of the day on match day. And I was like, slay, guys, this is amazing. So I agree.
Yeah, I love that. And the other one I would say is the phrase, we work hard, but we also play hard. You're going to hear that a lot. And I don't know, I feel like it generally comes from the really malignant seeming programs that will work you to the bone over the time you're there. I mean, sure, it's true of any program. Like, that's what EM residents do. They work hard, and then we get off and we go kayaking or whatever. But the programs that really say that a lot, when you hear it from faculty on like interview day, I tend to go, oh, you're just trying to hand wave away some duty hour violations or kind of malignant atmosphere.
Yeah, I had someone tell me, this wasn't my red flag, but this happened to a friend of mine in like a meet and greet or something. She was asking about like what residents like to do for fun afterwards, and someone, I think the program director, or like what residents like to do together, and they were like, they don't really hang out. They just kind of like, they all have their own lives and families. They just like go to work and then spend time with their family. Like, I think that's a red flag. Like, even like, I feel like my program is smaller, so it's harder for people to do things all together because they're like this, it's harder for schedules to match up on a smaller program. But even still, like, check the social media, see if they're hanging out, see if they're doing like journal clubs at faculty's houses, or like, like things like that like are green flags that they hang out together and do things together, even in the limited time that they have. Those were the things that I was looking for, like more like green flags like that.
One last one I'll add. If you ask about what there is to do in the area, like where the city where it is or whatever, especially if it's like not a well-known city, and they're like, oh, well, we're only 2 hours from the beach and we're only an hour and a half from the mountains, and you can get to this really cool city 2 hours there. I'm like, you're telling me everything I need to leave this place to do. You're telling me to get the hell out of here. That's a big red flag for me. We'll not name that program, but it was universal.
I had a lot of those too.
Next question is tips on how to get top 10% during auditions for slowies. And then the second one is what additional electives do residencies like to see for fourth year? Like cardiology, orthopedics, anesthesia, crit care / what things do you guys think are helpful?
Okay, this is my favorite. Oh, sorry, Kayla, do you want to go first?
Nope, go Lulu.
I was gonna say, this is my favorite thing to talk about because I have a little bit of a soapbox on this, because I really think the things that will get you in the top 10% on the SLO are not like knowing every single like EM fact and like staying on top of like journal articles and knowing like how to recite the categories of the heart score like off the top of your head. Like that might make you look good, but the real things are not EM knowledge. And I think one of the biggest ones, and I'm sure like the rest of the panelists will talk about this, the biggest one for me, situational awareness. When you are in the ER, it's a very, very chaotic environment. There are a lot of things going on. There are a lot of things going on in your attendings and your residents' heads. And you want to put yourself in a position where you are there to help, but also not in the way. And that can be like a really delicate balance. And so, pay attention to what's going on around you. Like if someone's putting in orders, if someone's charting, if someone's in the middle of calling a consult, like not the best time to like ask a question. If there's like an active code that you're not part of, try to stay out of the way, but position yourself to like where you can see and you can still be engaged and help if you need it, or grab something for someone. Or like if there's a procedure that needs to be done, like you can help with that, but don't stand like in the way of everyone else. Don't stand in the way of the nurses. If a nurse is taking an assessment, like doing an assessment and doing their things, don't like walk in the room and be like, hey, I'm student doctor, like whatever, and like completely interrupt them. So just be aware of the situation, be helpful, but don't be in the way would be my biggest piece of advice.
The EM Clerkship podcast, if you want the clinical side of things. It's a great podcast. Listen to it on your way to shift. Listen to it this summer. Listen to it sometime. He talks a lot about getting a top 10% slow. Like we talked about, that's not the like terminology anymore. It's now called like needs a little guidance or whatever. Instead of top 10%. But that's great for the clinical side. And I totally agree with Lulu. If you've never heard of the 2 a.m. test, that's the test that a lot of EM docs will judge you on. And it's basically, if they are stuck in the department with you and it's 2 a.m. and there's like, it's just the two of you and either it's super busy or there's nothing going on and like they just have to hang out with you. They're forced into a situation where they cannot get away from you. Are you going to make their life miserable? Are you a weirdo that's going to like clear their throat every 2 seconds or like hawk loogies into the trash can or start talking to them about some esoteric thing that they don't care about and make them feel really uncomfortable? Then like, yeah, they won't like you. So emotional intelligence, right? Just
Be a normal,
be chill, bro.
emergency medicine person. You have to
Be chill. Be chill. That's the big one.
The nicest compliment I got during fourth year was like, hey man, like you were pretty helpful and you weren't annoying.
I got feedback that I was normal and that meant a lot to them. And I was like, thank you so much, I'm not.
Yeah.
One thing I'm going to do is tell you guys some apps that I think are very beneficial to have on shift. One for procedures is called Touch Surgery. I think it's free, but you can type in like chest tube and it will walk you through everything about chest tube. And I'll like put all these in the chat too, but that's really beneficial. And then another one is literally just called Suture. And you can put in like the size of what it is, what it looks like, and where it's at. And it'll tell you what size suture you need, what type of suture to use, when to take it out. It's very beneficial, super easy to use. And then of course, MD Calc is very beneficial. And I have several more, but they're a little bit too escalated, I think. But those three are really great just for really quick, like, oh God, what's a Chad's Vask 2 mean? I don't even know who that is.
Nerve block is another one made by the same creator of Suture. That's helpful.
The Touch
I love
by Medtronic. And so that's kind of nice.
Also, I'm going to share Blake's advice to us. Blake is our president of RSO, and she gave, I think, super helpful advice to me was get to know your supply closet on your EM rotation. Like if you're, I don't know, this is like the best advice I think that I ever got. It's like, if you get there on your first day a little bit early, ask someone where it is to let you in so you can figure out where all the stuff is, like especially like suture stuff, like where the central line kits are, where the sterile gloves are, that kind of stuff. Even easy things like a flush. I don't know. Anyway, that way, if you're like in the middle of something or someone's in a procedure and they're sterile or somebody just says, oh, we need this, you can be like, I know where that is. I will go get it. And they will love you. Or if you like get your like laceration repair, like all set up, you've got the like right suture, you've got the lac tray, you've got everything. And they're like, oh man, we need to go do that lac. And you're like, okay, I got everything we need for it. It's ready to go when you are. That is like sometimes the biggest thing, and they will just love you for it.
Mm-hmm. And as a former nurse, let me throw this out there too. Ask people that aren't your precept, like aren't your attending, for feedback. There was at JPS where I ended up matching, there was one time where the trauma bay was just getting shellacked and everybody was spread thin, and we had a young girl come in and nobody was around to check her out as a trauma. And so I just ran it like it was a level 1 trauma. I didn't know if it met criteria or not. I was just doing it. And so it was just literally just me and a tech, a very seasoned tech who had been there a long time. And so I ran it the best I could. And when we were done, everything was all set and we had time later. I pulled him aside and I said, hey man, you got any feedback on how I ran that? Because I just I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything, or I didn't mess anything up. And he gave me a little feedback, and more importantly, he gave me feedback, but it meant a lot to him that I solicited his opinion, that I valued his opinion, because he's a senior member of that unit. And that probably made it back around to somebody that ended up making some kind of decision on where I ranked. Those kinds of things matter. I mean, those people's opinions of you matter. They will have valuable feedback for you. Everyone on the unit that can give you something.
If one nurse says that they don't like you, the rest of the program doesn't like you immediately.
The nurses, your nurses, I'm convinced, are like the cool kids in high school, and I was just obsessed with them. And they helped me out so much because I helped them out when I could and when I was able to. Like once I was putting in an IV, and this is at where the place where I matched. So I also think this potentially may have influenced where I matched. But I was putting in an IV and I got blood literally all over myself and made a huge embarrassment. And I turned around and one of the nurses was there with like a new pair of scrubs and hydrogen peroxide for me to get blood out of my figs. I had nurses again where I matched who would like, if they knew like there was a cool procedure going on, they would like come and grab me. And because, you know, I would, you know, offer to put in Foley's for them, offer to put in NG tubes and OG tubes. Like I would, you know, walk by patients, take them to the bathroom, you know, basic things that we can do to help them out.
If you see a UA has still not been done and that's the only thing that patient's waiting for or something, get them up and walk into the bathroom and then go tell that nurse like, hey, I got their urine, like, you know, what do you want me to do with it? Or just be helpful. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, draw the 3-hour troponin. If you're waiting on the 3-hour troponin and like you're rather than sitting at your computer and going, shit, when is this 3-hour troponin going to come in? We really need this drawn. Literally just go draw it. Just, you don't have to have a label, like just go draw it and then don't let go of it. Don't put it down somewhere because if it's not labeled, they won't take it. Literally go hand it to the nurse and say, hey, I got that 3-hour, I know you're really busy. I got that 3-hour troponin for you. Like, don't be passive aggressive about it. Be sweet. You're doing a favor, honestly and truly. And they will love you for that. And it will expedite care.
I had a quick question kind of related to what you guys were talking about. I'm Kendall, third year at TCOM, Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. So you guys are talking about like ways to be helpful, and like Lulu, you just said like do Foley's or like da-da-da. I feel like personally, so I'm kind of like coming towards the end of my third year. I haven't had an EM rotation yet, but I feel like my third year experience has been like very much like not procedural. Like I have hardly gotten to do anything. So like, what if you don't have like the background or like the skills to just jump up and like know how to put a Foley in or know how to do these things? And so then it becomes of like, if you're trying to help, you're actually just slowing down the process and you're screwing things up and you're more so in the way. Does that make sense? So kind of like, how did you guys get that experience? And like, when did you know when you were comfortable enough with your skills to kind of jump in and offer to do these things for people?
I kind of think a lot of it is just trial by fire. And I know you don't want to do that on an audition, but if you familiarize yourself with the basic procedures like central line, intubation, chest tube, suturing, Foley, OG, NG, like the nursing skills up to, I would say, chest tube, central line being the most serious probably that you would do. Just familiarize yourself with those. And like, if you can explain it to them and say, this is my first time doing this, but if you sit here and walk me through it, I would really love the opportunity to do it with you. And they will do that for you. And like, we were in a code one day, they really take you seriously and they want you to learn these things. I was in a code one day and my attending was like, have you put in a femoral central line? And I was like, no. And she's like, we don't say that here. Go do it. And I was like, okay. And
but you asked me a yes/no question. The answer was no.
I literally just grabbed a resident and I was like, please walk me through this. Like, I know the steps. And so he like walked me through the whole thing and was just really glad I grabbed stuff because I was familiar with what it looked like because like the touch surgery app. And he was like, oh, I'm just really glad that you like at least know where you're headed, you know? So I think that you just familiarizing yourself ahead of time, even though you don't have the experience, will help you a lot. And that they want you to learn. They realize that you're not an intern or a second year or a third year resident. You're a medical student who might not have that experience, and they want to help you with it. So don't be scared of it.
Also, if you have done stuff on a mannequin, that counts. Explain, say, well, I've done it on the mannequin before, but I would love to have you teach me on this patient or something. But at least even if you've done it on a mannequin, that still counts as, you know the steps to it.
And don't underestimate the power of, if you're wanting to do something, there's maybe a little bit of time critical element to it, not like, crashing patient or whatever, but if you say, hey, I'd like to do this procedure, here's what I would do. And then just like bang, 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 you do a quick verbal walkthrough of the steps so that, that's you reminding yourself. It's also you demonstrating to them and giving them the opportunity to correct you and say, no, you actually wouldn't do this step first, you do this step, or you forgot to talk about this step. That's a great way to just quickly kind of demonstrate competence for somebody and give them more confidence that they can entrust you with that Foley insertion or, whatever. I think there's a lot of value in that too.
Something that really worked for me is, you can just, especially for some of the procedures that I feel like we don't necessarily learn. Like I don't even know if I learned how to put in a fully in med school, or like an NG tube or an OG tube, things like that. Like I just be really aware what's going on. Like after they intubate, they're most likely going to immediately put in an OG. And so watch and say like to the nurse, like, hey, can I watch you do this so that next time I can do it? And like, I've never had anyone say no. Or I was lucky to do my one of my auditions at a place where they have a nursing school. So there were a lot of nursing students. So they were being taught how to do Foley's and things, like they were put in lines and stuff. And so I'd be like, I'd keep my eyes and ears open. And if someone was teaching anything, I'd be like, hey, like I'm a med student, but can I just watch this? And I got a lot of practice that way. And eventually, once you get to know those nurses, like I had 2 or 3 nurses who knew me well. And like, then I worked my way up where I was like, hey, like I want to start doing ultrasound guided IVs. Like, can you, like, if you're not doing anything, can you come and help me? And they were more than willing to come and help. So I think like start by just saying like, hey, can I watch? So next time I can do it myself, and be polite, build relationships with them. And that really helped for me.
One thing I did per Blake's recommendation was, she was like, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and nothing is going on, find a nurse and sit down with them and be like, I will literally bring you a dozen donuts tomorrow if you just sit here and teach IVs to me, and like let me do it on you. Even like they really will. I don't know, but like just asking the nurses, they're not going to come back and be like, she didn't know how to put an IV in. That's going to be a little bit troublesome. But yeah, 2 o'clock in the morning is a great time to learn things.
Mhm.
When you're being a normal person, because you want to make everyone think you can pass a 2 a.m. test.
Any advice for classes to take 4th year that you feel would be helpful for before residency?
Ultrasound. If you can do it, fit an ultrasound rotation in. So I kind of did so there's the recommendation on how many EM sub-Is to do, and sure, follow that. But I also did an EM subspecialty rotation with ultrasound, and I did that at an EM residency program. So it still gave the program the chance to look at me, for me to look at them. It wasn't like going beyond Cord's recommendation of number of, sub-Is to do. And my interviewers like love to talk to me about my ultrasound rotation. So if you can do an ultrasound rotation, that will help you so much.
I really like doing ICU. I did MICU in January of 4th year at a residency program. So I got to work with the EM residents. And, some people are like, why did you do ICU? It's 4th year, like relax. But I really liked it. I feel like I got so much more comfortable. Relatively, I'm still very much not comfortable with critical patients, but like relatively much more comfortable with very sick patients, and somewhat of like the management, like pressors and things like that we do in the ER. So I highly recommend ICU.
Also, I don't know that we've actually touched on Cord recommendations going off of Kayla. Have they released a statement yet for this year?
I don't
No,
think
but I
have.
talked to Molly Estes about it in Phoenix. It's going to be 2. They said 2 plus a subspecialty, and she actually cited a little bit of data which I thought was interesting. So they actually have studied this, and they found that like the third sub-I, the third slow quality does dip in general. And so part of the reason that they recommend to isn't just to like keep you from rotating everywhere you want to rotate. It's not necessarily that there's just such a shortage of programs. It's allegedly also partially due to them trying to protect you from getting worn the hell out by doing 3 sub-Is before November of your 4th year, and you're interviewing all the time and you're exhausted, and you're a tired little girly, and then you miss something on your 3rd sub-I, and they're like, well, maybe they can't really hack it, and then it reflects on your slow, and you don't know that, and then you send your slow on to all the other programs because you think it's a good slow, and it's not such a good slow, and then maybe you miss out on some opportunities. Now that's a little catastrophizing, but it's feasible.
Yeah, some people
So-
feel the need to do like all these auditions and slows, and sure, if that's what you really want to do, go for it. But I did my 2, I was exhausted, and I did not do anything after that. And I've been coasting since then with easy rotations, and I do not regret a single second of it. So don't feel
Same
like
girl,
you have
same.
to be a gunner and do every single thing that's offered to you. Do what you have to do a good job at it, and then chill out. It's your 4th year of med school. But if you want to do all those other things, then have at it. I just don't want anyone to feel like they're not doing everything they should be doing by not doing it.
Wow, so they still haven't published. That's still last
Yeah,
year's, right?
it's still up there. I had to like dig a little bit to find it, but it says most students should complete a maximum of 2 EM rotations. This can be your home plus an away or possibly 2 aways. And then it talks about like 10 to 12 interviews should be sufficient for most students. So I assume it'll be somewhat similar this year.
And I mentioned this in the comments. I'm going to say this out loud because I want everybody to hear it. Do not pay attention to the outcomes in the match document. The NRMP outcomes in the match that goes through every specialty, and it has these graphs, and it tells you, oh, if you have 14 interviews, then you have a 96% plus chance of matching. Do not pay attention to that. That is historical data based on normal years, based on the years where there were 12 pre-SOAP spots and whatever. We don't know what that number is now. It might be 4. It might be 4 interviews to have a 95% plus chance of matching. So if you have 10 interviews and you're going, oh my God, I'm not getting any more interviews, I'm not going to match. Stop. Don't do that to yourself. You will absolutely match if you have 10 interviews next year. Like, my God.
Even though none of you will listen and you're going to be anxious little elves and you're going to do it anyways, just know that we all felt the same way, and it's
Yep.
going to be, I promise.
And we can't blame you because all 4 of us did the same thing too. So,
Yep.
And we got this exact same talk.
but try to remember us when you are
So,
applying.
I understand.
But we didn't get the exact same talk because there
No,
were
we
only
didn't.
270 unfilled spots our year. But this year there were literally fewer applicants than spots. Like, even in the 270 unfilled spots year last year, there were still more applicants than spots. There were about 150 more applicants than there were spots. This year there literally were not as many applicants as spots.
Which is not great for EM, and of course we
No.
want to get better, and we're going to work towards that, but it is very good for your applicant who really wants to be an ER doctor.
But there were like 120 more spots than applicants, and then the 555 spots didn't fill. So make of that math what you will, but just know that.
All right, next question. We might have answered this. Tell me if we answered this. Question is, what resources did you guys use to prep for sub-Is / using for residency?
I'll just add one more to the mix in terms of apps. I love WikEM, like WIKEM. Sometimes I found that like up to date is really, really great, but sometimes I just want like a little bit of a briefer summary. Like, I don't want like an entire like, surgical management and like outpatient follow-up guidelines and like all of that. If I just want like, what are the hallmark signs of flexor tenosynovitis? Like, you could just look it up.
Which
on WikEM.
antibiotic do I use?
Exactly, like little things like that I recommend for WikEM. So
If you're an IMRA member, they do have an IMRA antibiotics app, which
Mhm.
is also nice.
Also, I just posted this super long but helpful PDF. It's by EM Basic, which is another podcast. And it's got a whole bunch of different like short basic introductory things about like how to do an LP or like what your differential should be for like hyponatremia and stuff like that. It's pretty helpful. I printed it out double-sided at a hospital, so I didn't have to pay for the pages. So if you can do that, I think it'd be worth it too.
All right, and our last question in the chat that we haven't gotten to yet is, what suggestions might you give for someone who doesn't necessarily look good on paper?
Be yourself. Be the best version of yourself, and let those people know on auditions, which will inevitably be the most important part of your application if you're not great on paper, that you are going to make an amazing resident. That's all they care about. Effort. Put in the effort. You're teachable. That's what they care about. They will see that, and it will show on your slows, and it will show in your interviews. That's all that matters. You have to have the paper stuff to get through the stupid barriers that people said on ERAS, but they don't matter once you get the interviews. So get the interviews, get the auditions, and be the best version of yourself. And who cares what you are on paper?
You are more than your scores. sub 500 complex 1, right?
Same.
So like 30th percentile complex 1.
Oh yeah,
And
I
it
suck
did
on
not
paper. I
matter.
too suck on paper. So trust
Yeah.
me, I get it.
I'm gonna
All
put
the
my
stuff-
email in
all the
the
stuff we
chat
said.
real quick. I don't know.
Yeah, y'all feel free to contact me. I was like a real scared little
Yeah.
baby. Up until I saw my match email, really. So I get it. And if you would have asked me if I could have matched at where I matched at, even last year, I would be like, you're so cute. That's hilarious.
I'm going to add one more thing also that I think is important in addition to all the things that they just said. I think networking is really important, and I don't think it's too late to network. Go to the meet and greets that they have like during the fall. Go to the virtual, like whatever fairs, all of those things. Go to conferences.
Go to our
Because
conference.
yeah, go to our conference, come to our residency fair, not like shameless plug, but
Correct.
come to our residency fair, because that is an opportunity for them to see you outside of what, like your paper. They have a name and a person, and like they've met you, and you're more than just like a number on their screen. And that helps tremendously. So don't underestimate the power of networking, even this late, or not this late. It's not late, even at this stage in the game.
I got
You know how
it.
basically, go ahead, Coral.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I got at least 7 interview offers from residency fairs.
Yeah, I got one from our
I-
conference.
Straight up, I got 3 or 4 from the conference. I straight up
Mhm.
asked. I was like, hey, it's me. I applied to your program. I'm interesting. Look up my application. And they will write your name down and they will look up your application if they actually care about getting good people.
Without oversharing, Lulu got one in a Vegas club at our conference. Like we were in a speakeasy.
This is being recorded.
There was
That's all
bottle
I- that's
service
all I
and
said.
Lulu got an interview
There
there.
was
Hey,
no vodka.
networking never stops. I network around the clock, even at the
Yeah.
club. So
Basically,
never
all
heard
of us on the board are on the board because we showed up to conference and we're just like weird little clingy babies, and we were like, "Hey, be my friend. I'm weird. Be my friend." And like that gets you in the door with like a great group of people who will support you and who know people and who will. I mean, the number of people who stuck their necks out for me during interview season because they knew me from Twitter when I was still on Twitter, or because we're friends on the board. And we're like sending emails and making phone calls on my behalf to people that they just happen to know. Some of them are like, we're like, oh, this guy used to, babysit my sister, like whatever. Like it's just weird connections that they have, and they will get you interviews at freaking like Emory, at UMich. Like these things come through, they matter. And then like TCEP, if you're focused regionally, last week we had TCEP in Texas. Kendall was there, I was there, and like as a third year, she got the privilege of, and as a match fourth year, I got to just sit back and chill and do this too. We got to meet every program director in Texas. Like every program in Texas was represented there. And at the fair, they came around and they sat at Kendall and my table and they talked to us. And Kendall got to ask questions, and every program director in Texas got to see her face and meet her. And like I said, I was just along for the ride, having fun. But like you got to do it. You got to.
So we
are
doing that kind of thing in the fall in August. If I don't know if we've talked about that yet, but we have a residency fair / speed dating event. It's August 13th, I think, but come for the whole weekend if you can. It's Saturday, Sunday, and we're gonna have a ton of residency programs there. A lot of them represented. Come talk to them. Like they, said before, if you talk to them, you're like, well, I guess for us it was different. We're like, hey, we applied because it was October. This is August, so actually it may be even better for y'all because it's before ERES. And so they can see you, get your name, get an idea of you, and then when you apply, you're like, hey, I met you at ACOEP in Washington D.C., and they love that. They love it so much.
Yeah. Now
this feels like we're advertising, and like we are, but we're not getting paid. But like we're advertising because we believe this works.
Well,
like this worked for us.
Networking truly works. Like I got one of my auditions because I knew the program director, and I went up to him and said, hey, can I do an audition? And he said, just send me your email. And the next day I got an email with my audition information. Like it really goes so far. Like, and networking in EM also gets you in speakeasies with bottle service. So just keep that in mind as well.
And this is open to first, second, third years. Ask your schools for funding. I know it's expensive. A lot of them, they'll say, well, ask your EMIG club or whatever. If you want to present something, we'll pay your way or something like that. If you need to present something, put together a case study or a case report or a poster, whatever you need to do so that your school will pay for you to come, or at least pay part of your way.
And we're all really cool and we'll all be there and we'll help
Yeah.
you.
All
We'll help
right,
you
you
practice.
guys, thank you so much for coming. There's like 2 more questions in the chat that weren't answered. So feel free to stick around, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time because this has been an excellent hour. So thank you all for showing up, and stick around and ask these folks your questions if you have something that didn't get answered. But
Yeah, my time isn't important. I'm a post-match fourth year.
yeah,
Yeah.
Spencer's
Not to put Spencer on the spot, but I think he has a very good answer to James's question in the chat. If anyone wants to stick around and hear, I think it would be important to address the unfilled spots.
Yeah, elephant in the room, right? Like, we got to talk about it. And Lulu and Savannah and I are actually going to be on an upcoming episode of EM Over Easy podcast that we recorded in Phoenix, talking about this very thing. So you may hear some of the same thoughts that I shared there. So first of all, I think the really important thing to note is that this does represent a decrease in applicants. And that's what a lot of program directors are seeing it as I've realized in Texas. That's how they're thinking of it. They're going, well, there's fewer applicants. Maybe we don't need to change. And I would push back on that. They do need to change. There are things that they need to address in how they screen and select and interview candidates. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if a program didn't fill, because there were some really good programs that didn't fill, Lulu's in a program that didn't fill. And it's a great program, and I have the utmost faith in that program. But what it represents is not the quality of necessarily the quality of the program or anything else. What it represents is that applicants and programs ranked each other differently. It is a mismatch between how applicants felt about a program and how programs thought applicants felt about them. A program might have hung their hat on me and said, oh, Spencer loves us. Put him up high. We love him. We want him. We're going to get him. He's going to take a spot. And I'm sitting back here going, boy, they suck. I'm not even going to rank them, or they're 12 on my list. And so there's this mismatch. And that's ultimately what it fundamentally, the only thing you can infer from a program not filling is that applicants and programs rank each other differently. Now that can be for different reasons. That can be because it's a 4-year program and they didn't sell that value added, appropriately to applicants. And applicants said, I don't see what's worth the investment about spending another year here, which is a problem that a lot of 4-year programs have. It may be that the corporate medicine HCA conversation made its way to applicants. We know it did. We've all heard it. And so these HCA programs, regardless of what their internal quality is, regardless of what their applicant, or their resident experience is, are just not going to get as many applicants, or people are going to rank other places higher because they're going, well, even if this seems like a good HCA program, maybe I won't be able to get a job later because my residency is going to say HCA. There's all these thoughts going around in people's heads that drive applicants to rank certain programs differently than the programs rank them. With these really high quality programs, my personal opinion, they were being too precious about who they invited. They're gunning for this top 5%, top 10% of applicants by step scores, by whatever metric that they're using. And so they're interviewing this high echelon of applicants and not reaching down to anybody below a 260 step, whatever. Well, then push comes to shove. The people with 260 plus steps have a lot of options on the table. They have a lot of great programs they can choose from, and they may choose something else. So these programs need to liberalize their criteria a little bit and recognize, hey, we need to invite some more people. So what it boils down to for you guys is that it's a buyer's market right now. It is an applicant's market. You will very likely, as did most people in this match, match in your top 2 to 3. I mean, nobody is dropping down to like 9 on their list right now. That's just not the climate in EM. That's not to say it's not competitive. Like those upper echelon programs are still going to be sought after. But you just need to know that you can afford to be very likely a little choosy about how you approach things this year. Don't be like me. Don't apply to 96 programs. Like, that was crazy. That was pants on head crazy. I wasted a lot of money. I spent a lot of time during interview season doing that. So, be a little choosy, know your value, know what you're bringing to the table, and try to approach the match process honestly. I always compare it to dating, but like serious dating. Like I'm looking to get married dating, not casual dating. It pays to be honest about what you're seeking, and it pays for them to be honest about what they're seeking, because if they're not as into you as you are into them, they shouldn't be putting that forward to you, and vice versa. You shouldn't be fronting that you really like a program if you're not super into them, because what does that gain anyone? So that's my soapbox. Is that what you're looking for, Lulu? Did I say the thing?
Yes, that was exactly what I was hoping you would say. He's just so
He said the thing.
eloquent with his way with words. But yeah, stay tuned for our podcast if you want to hear more.
Cool. Well, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. I will stop the recording.